What's up, everybody? Welcome to Solana Weekly. This is your host, Thomas, and I want to thank you for joining in. Let's take a dive into the latest trends, use cases, and people behind the incredible growth of the Solana ecosystem. None of this is financial advice, but I'm hoping that all of this is alpha. Now let's get to the show. Today we've got Magellan here from Maps.Fun, and I'm super excited to what he's building out, right? They've got a full platform here. It looks like they're bringing cities on chain, bringing governance to your local cities. So I read up about it, got really interested in it, and Magellan was kind enough to come on the show. So thank you very much for joining us. How you doing today, Magellan?
Thank you so much for having me, Thomas. I've heard the show before and really excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I love talking Solana, and I want to talk to people that are building in the space, doing unique things, and absolutely what you guys are doing is very unique, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, so really, I'd like to hear about how you got to this part. Like, what was it that led you to building Maps.Fun out? What is it? And let's go from there. Let's hear it all.
Yeah, so I think so I got into crypto around 2020, 2021, something like that. First through the Vitalik white paper and just learning about Ethereum and everything. I used to live in Philly back then. Okay. And the CityDAO team used to host these meetups in New York City. And CityDAO at that time had bought out a bunch of land in Wyoming, and they were tokenizing that land, parcels as NFTs. And it was really exciting to kind of look at what they were doing at that point. That was my first entry point. I got really excited. And I heard about Super Team on Solana. Mm-hmm. And I applied for a grant, and I got in for a grant that was to build out a community of builders and planners and geospatial scientists who are going to help develop network state cities.
Oh, awesome. Oh, that's awesome.
So I have a background in geospatial science and planning, which is how I got into that. And I used to work with a bunch of cities before I started doing crypto stuff. So I did that, and that at that point did not go very well. I wasn't able to build a strong community. I wasn't able to sort of do the stuff that we should have. And kind of pivoted, did a bunch of other stuff, built a few products, worked on a completely different project with Filecoin, sort of kept doing stuff along the way. And sometime around last year, I was looking at everything that has been going on in crypto lately. And my thesis for 2025 at that point was that we're going to go back to the 2020, 2021 era of crypto. And in that era, in my mind, there were a few projects that I found really interesting. One of them was obviously CityDAO, and there was the City Coins project that had been built on top of stacks. And Cabin DAO was another one that I was kind of involved with.
Yeah.
And I was just this might be an opportunity to kind of redefine how we think about cities and start building a new mechanism for funding them, which is where Maps.Fun started. We kind of riffed on the idea for a few weeks, me and the team and a bunch of our advisors and everyone, and eventually arrived at what we have today, which is Maps.Fun is fundamental. In the simplest sense, it's a launchpad for cities and city communities to launch a token for themselves and to self-govern that token and fund it and to be able to utilize that token for whatever purposes that they might want to in their own specific local context.
Oh, that's so awesome. So you hit on a bunch of really cool things there. So I remember hearing about CityDAO. I wasn't deep into that at all, but I remember when they were buying land and tokenizing, and I was like, this is crazy. That was when we were really kind of starting to see what you could do with crypto, right? Like there wasn't really too many things like that when that was coming around. And Cabin DAO was another really interesting project, but I feel like you're right in that those type of projects, they sound really appealing to me right now, right? Like we're gonna we went through this crazy time in the last few months of meme coins are the product market fit, it's gambling and degeneracy, but the other side of that is people are building out really cool platforms, and it's almost I think it's gonna be a little bit of the test where we're gonna be coming back to why we all are in crypto in the first place. And this seems like one of those core reasons of organizing people, organizing your community, organizing the people around you, and doing so in a unique and fun way to do it, right?
Yeah, it's also very interesting because, with Cabin, it was like Cabin is still around and they're doing a bunch of really cool stuff still. Uh,
Yeah.
City DAO unfortunately was not able to sort of continue, and City Coins as well. But all of these projects in that time, there was this. There's a short period of time back then where the belief was that crypto could fundamentally change how we lead our lives. And somewhere along the lines, of course, like we kind of missed that. We forgot that that could happen, and we pivoted and pivoted and pivoted, and we kind of developed a bunch of different products. And then we're coming back to square one, and we're going to sort of start doing that stuff again. And it's a very interesting time because in that time period between when we used to think that crypto would do that versus today, AI has almost come full circle,
Yeah. Oh, true.
right? And our lives are much more closer to being lives powered by AI than they were maybe back in 2021 or 2020. So in that landscape, I think projects which are I have a few sort of thoughts about like how projects in the .fun economy almost will become a form of universal basic ownership instead of universal basic income, which is the idea of like Solana being like the internet capital market and .fun economy being the structure, the universal basic ownership layer of the economy.
Oh, okay. Wait, I need to digest that. That sounds awesome. Okay, so as ownership, as in a way to prove ownership or a way to actually own your part into different things.
The latter, the latter. You're the way a way to own your part into different portions of the on-chain economy.
Wow. Whoa. Okay. Okay. So we have that. You build out a platform for it, and you're basically essentially combining a lot of those different theories together into one platform. Is that right?
Yeah, I think my thinking on this has changed since we launched actually. When we launched, I had a very strict sort of mindset about how this should be structured and how
Yeah.
reserves should play a role in this and how the DAO should be structured, etc., etc. We launched two cities. Since we launched those two cities, I've spoken to roughly 50 different communities who want to launch city tokens for their cities. And what we've learned is that this shouldn't be a one size fits all approach.
Yeah.
Every city kind of needs something a little bit different, and every city might want to approach it differently. So you want to structure it as loosely as possible and allow those cities to operate on their own, like those city DAO communities to operate on their own independently. So the core structure of the product remains the same, but we're handing over much more independence to the communities to do what they want to do with it.
Yeah, like that. As much as we like to think of, every community and city being similar, it's like they all have their own needs, they all have their own wants, and unless they get, what they're specifically wanting to get out of the product, they're likely not going to continue using it, right?
Yeah, it's also the classic engineer's problem of like engineering the product too much.
Yeah.
I want to make it like this and all of these like complicated things. It's just like no, people don't give a shit. They
Yeah.
want to use it, and that's all.
Yeah, yeah. They want to use it, and a lot of times they want to use it in the way that they want to, right? They don't
Exactly.
necessarily want to go through your workflow specifically, right?
Yep.
Cool. Now, the two cities that I see that are live, it's New York and San Francisco. Is that right?
Yes.
So those are the two that are live now. Do you see this being more for like improving current cities and the way that they're run, or do you see this more as like a tool for new cities being built out? Like you talked about the network state, there's always like, the idea that you're going to get together and take over some sort of town, like Wyoming, like they did in Wyoming. Do you see it being like that eventually, or do you see it being, I guess, whatever users want, I guess?
So I'm going to take like two steps back and
Okay.
try and set some context for this. I think over the next 5 years, next 5 to 6 years, we will start, and even today, we'll start living in a world of abundance. Needs will be taken care of, the basic necessities will be covered, and things like that. In that case, I think human life will have three fundamental functions left to sort of do. The first one will be fueling that abundance. So you need more entertainment, more content to consume, more energy, and just more of everything, just fueling the abundance.
Yeah.
The second will be sort of exploring and expanding. So go live in Mars, settle Mars, build a city on stilts in the sea and stuff like that. And the final one will be just environmental modeling, which is control your existing environment in a much more sophisticated way and improve it such that your overall, the larger context in which you live is much like better. And so far, the third has kind of been taken care of. So historically, the third, which is environmental modeling, used to be a community's job, right? A bunch of people would settle a city. They would decide that, okay, we're going to like build out this particular part of the world and we're going to do something here. And over time, it would evolve. And somewhere along the line, we decided that, okay, maybe this plot of land here needs a parent to take care of it. And we're going to assign a parent and we're going to call it the city government. And that city government got structured, and over time we kind of became more and more dependent on it. And today most city governments work on like these billions of dollars of municipal debt, right? 4.6% of all US national debt is just municipal debt.
Yeah.
So we kind of became like overtly dependent on that part. And I think we will, as the scale of abundance and our ability to do things expands, people will become much more hyperlocal. They will become more focused on their immediate context, which means communities will come together and they will self-organize and they will start taking action on their own for their own regions, which is where I think we come in. So city tokens are a way for those communities to self-organize and do things on their own. Now, I'm not saying that you can launch a city token today, hit $1 billion in market cap, and let's say you have $250 million in the treasury. With all the capital in the world, you can't go out today and build a bridge in San Francisco. That's not a possibility. It's a human coordination problem. But there'll be 5 sort of steps in which this will expand, right? It is always going to begin as a meme and what people associate with in terms of the cities. So cities themselves are also memes. San Francisco is the tech hub, New York is whatever, Detroit is Eminem's hometown, whatever. So all of these things like have an impact on the city's meme value. And once you have the meme value, is when a community will start beginning to form, but it'll be a cloud community, kind of like Balaji talks about it in the network state context, which is a cloud community will form. And that cloud community will, because this cloud community is geographically constrained, it'll immediately translate into a land community. And it'll have a physical presence, whether that's through a co-working space or whether that's through a shared party house or whatever. Once it has that, it has a footprint and it has capital. Now it has domain and assets, which it can sort of exert control over a larger portion of the world, which is when it'll start sort of taking up activities within the physical sphere of the city. So that might start off as just crowdfunding campaigns for small businesses or loyalty programs or fixing up sidewalks and stuff like that. Or it might start off as just funding startups that are building products that help your city. It could be any of those things. And once it comes to that point is when you'll have enough of external influence that you can go out and go build that bridge. So this is not like a direct jump to the biggest possible scenario. It's just that it's a phased approach to arrive there.
Yeah, because I mean, when you're in an established city, especially like San Francisco, you are dealing with a lot of people, you know, the administrators that have been doing the same job for a long time. And in my mind, they would probably be extremely hesitant to any sort of, like outside capital that is going to challenge their authority by any means, right? Like that seems like the ultimate boss would be like those legislators or those administrative people. Is that right?
Yeah, but also if you have proven yourself to be a value add to the city as a community, and you have $250 million of capital, and you're putting that on the table, then it's a fiduciary responsibility for the city to take you seriously. If they don't, then it's idiocy at its worst. Right?
Yeah. And you know what? It kind of like brings me back to, a lot of like smaller towns. Like I don't live in a big city, right? Like I live in a smaller town. There's like an Elks Lodge nearby or like a Lions Club where it's like there were a lot more of these type of communities where they would go into towns and it would be like a town square, whether it's just for people drinking and organizing or whether they're voting, raising money for certain things. So I feel like that's something that is like in our nature, but hasn't really been something like on the top of all of our minds for the last, generation, maybe.
The last few decades, centuries probably, I think. Because if you think about it, the last civilization which lived in abundance was probably the Romans. And they had infinite amounts of time to think about ideas of what a state should be, what democracy is, what a city is, and all of the complex things around it, which is why the agora became so important. It's the place where people come and think together and take action. And Rome isn't really a nation state, it was a city state. And once we go back to the point where we are again in abundance, is when all of these problems start becoming much more valuable. And we start taking action again. It's just that now the agora doesn't exist and it's more of a Discord channel. And now the sort of the thought process doesn't exist around, is it democracy or is it what are the different structures of government? Maybe it's an entirely new form of government like Futarchy or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So if you're saying that we haven't really been living in abundance since the Roman times, so like what would you say that we're living in now, and like what would be, like the qualifying of like, all right, like we've crossed the chasm into abundance. What would that look like?
I think we're edging closer towards that every day now, right? There are more and more things that so throughout history, it's the amount of physical work that a human had to do per unit value created has decreased. And that limit is tending towards zero over time. So the closer that limit tends towards zero is us achieving abundance, because value is still being created without effort.
Yeah.
So I guess we are somewhere in the low ones and twos of that range.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And then with all of the like technological development, like with everything that's kind of coming down the line, like I feel that too, where it's like it seems like we're going to be in abundance, and it's not necessarily like immediately everybody's going to need universal basic income and everything's going to be zero, but the trend is everything is getting cheaper, right? With better technology comes everything gets better. With better AI, knowledge gets cheaper, so it's going to help us all out, bring us into abundance, and then we're going to come into an interesting place where it's like, what are we going to do, right?
Yeah, I think Sam Altman has like this talk where he talks about it. It's like, it's not really about what are we going to do. It's more about what are we going to do with ourselves.
Yeah.
Like as people, because the race that fundamentally defines itself based on what we do, if that has been taken away from you, then who are you really? And it's at that point when all of these hyperlocal things, the things which are really everyday issues that you don't notice, start to matter more and more. So a can of Coke that's tossed on the side of the street doesn't matter as much because you have 700 other things going on in your head. When those 700 things have been cleared out, then the can of Coke is a real disturbance, and it's an anomaly that should not exist.
Yeah, we're all going to turn into like how our retired parents act, right? Where we have the more time to care about that can of Coke and be like, hey, somebody littered in our town. We're going to figure out who that was, and we're going to make a big deal about it, right?
Yeah, hopefully without pitchforks.
Yeah, of course, right? Yeah. And I guess like a good way to do that would be to, you're organizing in, a couple different ways, right? And one of the ways could be like, hey, we have, is it actually a community that you're building through your platform, or is this more like the funding mechanism for a lot of it?
So it kind of puts both of those together.
Okay.
I think the interesting part is that we geographically restrict sales when the token launches.
You have to be within the city to actually buy it.
Yeah. So if I launch a token tomorrow for Louisville, Kentucky, then only people from Louisville can purchase it at first. There is still, of course, like public sale and everything like that, but a majority chunk of that is held by actually people in the city. So it's transitioning from this model of like municipal debt to almost municipal equity. It's your share, it's a stake that you have in this total amount of fund, in this total capital, that is the city's future.
Yeah. So is this kind of like a little bit of like the more extreme, more local version of like what's going on in the government right now with like Doge and Elon coming in and like wiping out different agencies? It's like we're getting more like direct through, like we don't need all of this because there are better systems now. Here's one of these better systems. We can totally flip how we think about all of this on its head. Or does that resonate at all with you?
Yeah. I think that makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense that like Doge is thinking about this at the federal level, And
Yeah.
probably Elon is thinking about this at the global level where he's trying to talk about South Africa and Europe and every other country that has these issues.
Yeah.
But I think this is the way I think about Maps.Fun is like, again, I mentioned this earlier, which is like, I think the entire dot fun economy is universal basic ownership. It's allowing people to own different pieces of their cloud life and own stakes in them, and that become their fundamental uh, uh, means of representing value once we transition into full abundance.
Wow. Now, one part of that you're probably not going to like is I own Solana Weekly.Fun. Is that going to be like encroaching in on the .fun ecosystem?
No, I think that it's just the dot fun economy is like just a phrase that I made up right now. I don't think it means anything.
Okay.
It's the idea that matters. I think pump and
Yeah,
DAOs and opinions
yeah.
now, all of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Pump Fun is one of the most successful products in all of crypto ever, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of think of it like it's the full-fledged transition of social media.
Yeah.
Where you lived in a world full of social media, it was the like was the currency.
Yeah.
And you've kind of converted that into sort of real value. And
Yeah.
DAOs is kind of the conversion of your of a group of people, and sort of the group chat has become monetized on DAOs, and like clout is probably the monetization of your influence. So it's all of these are different pieces of your everyday life that already exist that are being bought on chain, and we are doing that for the largest possible unit that you would associate with, which is still the smallest possible unit of geography that you would associate with, which is a city.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. That's so cool. That's so cool. Now I'm understanding why your name is Magellan, right? Magellan is like the famous traveler going through, right? Oh, that's so cool.
It's Magellan, and actually the cool part is that our entire team has similar names.
Oh, really?
we have a Columbus, we have a Marco Polo, we have Francis Drake.
I love it. I love it. That's so great. I mean, why not?
Yeah, we're leaning into it. It's fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So, oh man. So if you were to explain this to somebody that's like not in crypto at all, right? Like what's the like how are you explaining that to people, right? Because if you're building a city token, right? Like you can't just market that to people that understand crypto, right? Like San Francisco might be kind of an anomaly because everybody in San Francisco would, and not everybody, everybody's heard of crypto, whether they, own it or not. But it seems like a harder sell to people outside of the crypto ecosystem, right?
I think, so there are two versions of this, like two answers to this question that I think about. I have spoken to, like, for lack of a better word, normies about this. And I'll address that in a bit. But I think any sort of product that is crypto right now is going to start with its core user group of crypto natives and then trickle downwards. It's just the nature of the industry we're in. But just for context, when I speak to normal people, I start by asking them what they think the biggest problems in their city are, and if they had an opportunity to fix it, how much capital would they need, and just go into a deeper conversation about all of those things. And then they obviously, on their own, people start pointing out different groups or communities that are already doing this within their city. Like so for example, there'll be a parks association that is friends of this XYZ park or whatever, and that has been taking care of this park and stuff like that. So it's already happening. And then I say, okay, then what's their biggest constraint? What's their biggest problem? Like, they don't have exposure, they don't have access to capital, they don't have access to sort of the ability to coordinate a bunch of people over a long period of time and stuff like that. It's like, okay, now if I introduce a primitive that allows you to do that, would you be interested? And that's where sort of the entry point is usually.
Almost I think like crypto's aside. Like, I get the agreement on like, hey, this is something that I'm building. This is something that it sounds like you're wanting. This is how we're doing it, rather than like, hey, check out my crypto project, right?
Yeah,
It's getting
exactly.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then at some point, I do tell them about the crypto, and then it depends on the person's whatever opinions they might have on crypto, whether they accept it or not. So there is still
Yeah.
like a point of fracture when crypto comes in. But I think there's
Yeah.
just a general larger discussion around crypto itself, and that's going to evolve over time.
Yeah. 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 That makes sense. Yeah, and something you were saying there. So it's like, yeah, there are a lot of different organizations that do help, but it's almost like there's almost like a social contract between like the citizens of a town and like the like administrators or the people that actually could do something, and it seems like a lot of times it's almost like broken, right? I would assume in my town that if the lawn at the park is not mowed, I would just assume that it's going to be mowed within the next week or whatever. But if it's not, I wouldn't even know who to go to, right? Like that, like
Yep.
if for some reason that stopped, like I don't know what, there's a disconnect between like what they're actually doing and what I know that they're doing, and probably better off if there wasn't that disconnect, right? Like in the ideal world where we have more time to investigate those type of things, there would be no disconnect, right? Like my tax money that I pay would go, I would know where that money's going, who it's going to, who's actually doing it, right?
It's very interesting, right? Because I'll give you an example from like the City Coins project. So the City Coins project, when they launched in Miami because Francis Suarez was the mayor, it was the Bitcoin city, and all of those things, and
Yeah.
they had a lot of support from the city. And I think they had the system where there was a wallet that was dedicated for the city, and that would be sort of that the city could claim that wallet. And when the city claimed the wallet the first time, I think they had a total of like $10 million worth of city coins in that wallet. The city used some of that for rent relief during the pandemic and stuff, and something around that in that space. But ultimately, one of the things that you realize during that entire process is that the machinery there is so large in the Miami, like the city departments and everything, the bureaucracy is so large that $10 million makes a blip, right? It gets
Yeah.
lost in the ether between all these departments pushing paper around, and
Yeah.
nothing actually really got done. And the same thing happened when they tried to launch a New York City token, which was that they tried to launch it. They wanted to sort of get in touch with the different sort of the bureaucracy of the city, and going through the bureaucracy took them so long that even though the mayor was fully in on it, launching it took forever. So
Yeah.
I think it ties back to the point that you were making earlier about Doge, which is that some of these have become excessively bloated organizations.
Yeah.
And I've worked in a few, and I think it's confusing why they need to be that large sometimes. So I think so. A while back, I was working in with Detroit, and they were doing the Joe Louis Greenway, which is like a huge greenway across circuits across the city, and it's like multiple meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings with different communities, and nothing was really getting done. And
Yeah.
the curious part of that entire thing was that they had started building it. They had built like maybe 20% of it, and then they had paused at some point, and just nothing happened for a year after that.
Yeah.
And then they got started like a 1.5 year later or something like that. I don't remember the exact timeline, but they got started because they were stuck in like a bunch of the other shit that was going on. Now, I fully understand that there's like a bunch of stakeholders involved and you need to take everything into consideration. There's a democracy and all of those things. But it makes no sense for an organization to have 700 people involved on one single project and that project not to move forward for an entire year.
Yeah.
Right? So there is something definitely wrong in the works there. We don't know what
Yeah.
that is. And whenever there is something wrong there, that effectively means that you're breaking the social contract that you have with the citizens because you've been appointed to not have those things go wrong. This is
Yeah.
your job. So this is, I mean, yeah, it's across the world. And it's probably also to do with the fact that cities are easiest to deal with when they are a decent size.
Yeah.
When they become a little bit bigger than than you expect them to be, then they run into this problem of like it's just a too big a thing. Like a massive company that's trying to ship a product is going to take forever. And in that case, maybe smaller sub DAOs that are self-organized and broken down into different pieces is the solution there, which I don't think happens yet, because ultimately those in power are most incentivized to stay in power, not really to act.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and yeah, a lot of it just kind of comes down to like we just have like ineffective leaders in a lot of like important positions. So they're elected to lead, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily leaders because it's not like a job that people want to do. Like leading a city, like if you think about it, like you want a good job, you want a good tech job, you want to be a doctor, a lawyer. Like none of that comes back to like, yeah, I want to be a city leader and make sure that everybody is getting their fair share and all the correct projects are getting done, right? Like it's not like viewed as valuable as it probably should be, right?
I think, like, I have a different opinion on this, which is that I think the people who are there are, like, they're fundamentally well intentioned,
Yeah, yeah.
right? They want because no one gets into this job, which is a hellscape of a job, really, to be honest, uh, to for any other reason unless you're like really interested in it. And and I'm like an eternal like optimist, so I kind of like to see the positive in all of these things. And it just seems like they're well intentioned people. I think the
Yeah.
incentive structure for them is very weirdly structured. If you think of a city, the way, again, let's like the way Balaji talks about it, if you think of a nation state as a startup, you can think of a city as a startup. One of the things you need to do to succeed is you need to take risk to be able to do the things that you want to do. Well, politicians are not incentivized to take risk, right? They're incentivized to mitigate risk. It's the exact opposite job description. So
Yeah.
they can't really do a lot of bold moves, which is just means that they can't do what they want to do. So they come into office maybe thinking that they're going to get 20 things done, and by the end of the term, if they've done one of them, it's a victory. It's
Yeah.
just it's a systemic issue more than it's a like an individual issue, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a shame. Which is a shame that that's the way that it works out.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So you come into a city. Let's say that like a newer city reaches out to you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you said you've had 50 or so different cities reach out. Um, like what is the next step, right? So you're going to launch a coin in that city, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
that the next step, or you probably have to vet them, make sure that there's like sufficient people there willing to do it, or what does it look like? Can you just kind of walk me through that?
So we're coming out with this with the app, which will have all of these mechanisms inbuilt right now. So I'll
Uh-huh.
explain how that will work. But yes, the first step, point zero, is always I need to vet them. I need to get on a call with them. I need to see them face
Uh,
to face.
yeah.
Just verify their Twitter profile. Look who follows them, and who, just I need to check all of those things, because obviously we live in a we work in an industry which has a lot of like sus actors. Uh, so I need to do all of those things. Once that is done, I think what usually when people come to us, I tell them that you shouldn't be doing this as an individual. You should be a collective already that is approaching us. So, for example, a lot of the folks that have approached us recently have been local university blockchain clubs.
Okay.
Right. So Istanbul is an example. So Istanbul, the blockchain club has approached us, and they're like a group of students who are already like pretty large, and they're already interested in doing things in that city. Uh, or they're already pre-existing communities, whether Web3 or Web2, which have like they're either a developer community or a community of developers, artists, designers, a bunch of different people, all of those. So once it's them, then it's a little bit easier to get things off the ground, because obviously the entire load of managing this is not on a single individual. It's distributed across a bunch of people. The next step is just we ask them to sort of build out a set of partners with partnerships with different communities in the city, and start onboarding their users onto the app. The way we had it set up initially was that anyone could launch a city, and we kind of felt like that might be a bad idea. So the way we have it now is that all cities compete with each other to launch. When you join the app, you get an upvote and a downvote. You can upvote any city that you want that is typically your own city. You can downvote any other city that you want that is typically the city that you hate the most or whatever. But every week there is one city that wins, and that's the city that launches that week.
So it's going to be, so is that current every one per week is going, or is that kind of just how it's going to be?
It's going to be like that,
Okay.
right?
Oh, that's cool.
Right. So it's going to be one per week, and cities will compete with each other to launch. Now, when you join the app, we ask for your location once,
Uh-huh.
and we make you sign a message, which is again ZK. So you're not getting doxxed, but you're automatically whitelisted for your own city's presale. So you're already on board and you can start doing it. Now, in some cases, there might be that your own city is too small and you might want to have a larger geographic net that you want to build. So we can gate that according to whatever your needs are. I think I was having a conversation with someone who was from a small city in Tennessee, and they wanted to, instead of focus on their own city, they were like, can we just make it for all of Tennessee? And that's an option, and that's something that you as a community are free to do if you want to. But ideally, we recommend sort of creating a split where 70% of the supply goes to people from the city and 30% of the supply goes to the general public. Right? Once you launch, then once the pre-sale is complete, then the token migrates, the pool is created, and you can start doing trading the token as you want.
Okay.
The token
now
has two. Go ahead.
Sorry to stop you there, but to sign up, so say I'm a user, I log in, I'm on the app, I sign the transaction saying where I am. Are you buying in at that point? So it's like a
No.
commitment of funds to join in, or is it?
No, you're
It's
just
not? Okay.
you're just connecting Twitter, and you're telling us which city you're in. So the moment that city launches, you'll be notified and you'll be whitelisted on it automatically. But
Okay.
you'll have the option of buying the public sales of all the other cities that have been launched, and you can see what cities are doing in general and how they're doing it.
Oh, that's so cool.
So you'll have 25%. So the way we had it structured earlier was that 25% of the DAO funds were divided into two. We had 10% which was for a reserve asset and 15% which was for the DAO to manage. We kind of changed that, and we're now allowing the DAO to manage all the 25% and telling them that they can figure out if they want to set up a reserve asset and how they wanted to set up a reserve asset. In my mind, a reserve asset makes a lot of sense because it's fundamentally the idea of being anti-fragile, right? You want to get a secondary thing involved that is protecting you in case of fluctuations, or also in case of like giving you the ability to act with confidence without having to sort of think about take the fear of like market repercussions in your mind.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to be like at the mercy of the market if there's
Exactly.
a 50% dip in a day.
Exactly. But everyone wants to do this differently, so
Yeah.
it's really up to them. And the token is built on the Token 22 program. So it earns fees. It has a transfer fees inbuilt into it. So the fees go back to the DAO again.
Okay.
And the DAO is able to do what it chooses to do with those fees. They can either redistribute those to those holders, they can burn them, they can do whatever they want. It's really up to them.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So now, once you join the DAO for the certain area that you're in, are they like doing all these meetings in person probably, or is it like a Discord that has a specific chat where they all go, or how is the? where
Everyone's
they meet, I
treating it
guess?
differently.
Different. Okay. Yeah. Just whatever works for them. Like.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had a conversation in the morning with a city sort of team that wanted to launch a city token, and they already had a space that they had built out for people in this founders and builders in the city to come together and do stuff from. So they wanted to sort of continue using that, and they wanted to do like an IRL launch party or whatever for their community. So that's one. I think this is going to be the case in larger cities. Like for example, Miami or Denver or sort of New York City or San Francisco. It's just the cities are too large for people to congregate at one single place, and those will tend to be like a little bit more cloud-based communities first, and then they might have like occasional meetups and stuff like that. I think we are trying to figure out like, so the problem that we're trying to sort of narrow down on and solve right now is that I am really like interested in Futarchy as a DAO governance model.
Oh, me too.
And-
I love it. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I want it. I want to see it everywhere. It's so cool.
Exactly. So I'm really interested in it, and I want to figure out how in this like with the 25% DAO funds, DAO fund utilization can be governed using Futarchy I'm still trying to figure it out. So right now, those decisions are still taken in a much more sort of informal way, almost with Discord voting and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
we want to like integrate Futarchy in some way. I don't have a clear picture of how that looks, but we're
Yeah.
working on it right now.
And just for the listeners that haven't heard of Futarchy, can you define Futarchy?
Uh, I will be bad at this. So Futarchy is a model which allows market-based decision making. So
Yeah.
someone says that XYZ is what I want to do, and you trade a market for that decision. Let's just say I want to issue a new stamp with Thomas's face on it, and there's a yes and no market for it. Everyone trades the market, and there is a pass threshold for that particular proposal. If
Yeah.
at the end of the proposal's deadline, the pass threshold is leaning towards yes, then we print a stamp and everyone has it. And if it's no,
Yeah.
it's a no.
Yeah, it's like rather than you're not just casting a vote,
Exactly.
you're actually like you're buying your decision. What you want to see, you buy, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It's so cool. I feel like it's just like kind of starting to catch on, and I think even there's a couple more that just integrate. I think like Sanctum just integrated.
Sanctum
with
just
their,
did, and Sanctum wrote a really cool blog about it, which
Yeah.
I was very. So I like the approach that Sanctum took, because they said that we're not going to do like test cases and smaller proposals and this and that. If we're going to do this, we're going to go all in and do it completely,
Yeah.
and we're going to commit to it fully, which is the approach I want to take. Which means that we want to spend some time thinking about it. Like I don't want to. It's a little bit. Also, there is I think. There's a user education challenge and there is a UX challenge with Futarchy, which is that
Yeah.
it's very hard to make a fun, engaging UX around it right now,
Yeah.
and we'll have to like determine what that is, like figure it out.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you just have to do in order to understand, right? Like
Exactly.
I was
Yeah.
like I was like listening to people talk and like trying to read up about it, and then I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this and go in and buy one, and I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those. I'm also like sort of like I personally feel like the idea of the reserve asset is still very valuable. I think there is a bunch of different experimentations right now that's going on around bridging BTC to Solana, or
Yep.
through OR, which is like sort of hard money on Solana, and a bunch of these other projects.
I love Or too. Hard Hat Chad is gonna come on the show at some point, and like I think
Awesome.
that's like one of my favorite projects on Solana too.
Awesome. Yeah, so like both of those, I think there is value in sort of integrating reserve assets of that nature.
Yeah.
I am unsure again of how the reception of that will be from the community. So ultimately, like I feel like a lot of this needs to be community led, and we'll figure it out as sort of people start coming in and we get feedback.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so I was thinking of like how this would like play out in real life, and in my mind, what I kept coming to is like, all right, so it kind of starts out as a club, like say it was a crypto club at a university, you know, like Istanbul or what you said before. So it starts out as like a club, but then it's like taking it further, getting them more ingrained in the community. They're starting a coin, they're launching a coin, they're managing a treasury, they're deciding, you know, what values matter to them the most. They're able to vote on what they want to change in their community. And because they have a coin, they're capitalized and they can actually make choices. They can make donations, make choices, and they are basically more ingrained in their community because of it, right? Like it's not just a club or a committee, you know, it's taking it one step further to where they have ownership, a lot more ownership in it. Does that sound right? Like, is that kind of like how the progression would look, or?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's a group chat with a wallet at first.
Yeah.
Right? And then over time, it becomes a Discord channel, a Discord server with a wallet. Mm-hmm. And then that Discord server grows and it becomes an entire geography with a wallet. Yeah. And in all of those cases, there are different levels at which the wallet is able to act or intervene within the physical world. And if it does those effectively, it's almost a game at this point. It's like if you do those steps effectively, then you get to graduate to the next level, keep moving up the tiers. And there comes a point when it's a fully decentralized sort of mechanism that is well embedded into the city's economy, and things can happen on their own without there needing to be a. I don't actually. I don't fully agree with this. There will always need to be a figurehead. I don't think that we as humans kind of rally around leaders. We don't
Yeah.
rally around. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So I've always been pretty skeptical of DAOs in NFTs because it's hard to rally around, just like JPEGs on the blockchain, right? Like what it ends up doing and what has resonated the most with me is like smaller groups where it's like-minded people were researching different coins that are coming out or talking about the market, and it's like that is what made more sense to me rather than like managing a NFT treasury and that. But it seems like, so I always kind of was bearish on DAOs for that reason. But rallying around a community makes it like rallying around like where you live seems to like really resonate with me. That makes way more sense to me. And maybe that's the wrong way to think about it, but that's kind of the like what's coming to my mind. What do you think about that?
No, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I think so. There are a few reasons why DAOs have not worked in the past. I think one of them is just that they have been unnecessarily right curve, and
Wait, unnecessarily what?
unnecessarily right curve. Like
Oh yeah.
they've been right. So it kind of like takes a lot away from a person being able to participate. A newcomer cannot participate very well in a, for lack of a better word, an old school Ethereum DAO because
Yeah.
there is a lot of highbrow stuff happening there, and it gets a little hard to step in and do stuff. That's one.
Yeah.
I think if you the best version of this, by the way, there is a blog post that Cash from Superteam has written on the Superteam blog on how to run or how to manage a decentralized community. And
really?
one of
I
the
need- I
points
need
he
to check that
points,
out.
one of the points he writes there is that you need to put emphasis on independent action. Right? If you want something, don't ask for it. Don't wait for a vote. Don't wait for things to happen. Go and do it. Prove it that you're doing it, and then get like then get the process and all of the democratic stuff started.
Yeah.
But I think coming back to the point, I think there are two sort of networks within which humans operate today. There is a network of the internet, right, and that has its own network effects. And the chain, the blockchain you operate on has its own network effects. And then there are networks of proximity, right, which is effectively what a city is. A city is a network of relationships based on proximity. The reason accountability is lower on networks of the internet is because anonymity is a thing, and you can just vanish from the net. But accountability is very high in networks of proximity because you cannot vanish. It's very hard to vanish from a real world place. And because of that, because the accountability is inbuilt into the nature of that network, if you build a DAO around it, the DAO self-structures itself and allows governance to evolve without having to rely too much on the complications of like voting and snapshots and all of the jazz that goes along with DAOs right now, because you can literally see the guy. And I think this is especially true in like smaller cities. So someone reached out and they wanted to launch a token for Dubuque, Iowa. And I was really interested in it because I think like smaller cities, because the network of proximity is so strong there, right? It's almost like the number of atoms are fewer, but the bonds between the atoms are stronger.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Therefore you're able therefore you're able to execute much more. And with even though it is like on chain, it's not completely trustless. Like the trust is inbuilt into the network. You don't really need to think about it too much.
Yeah, well, you're dealing with people that you see every day. You can't make a aggressive vote that hurts your community and then go sit next to them at church on Sunday or whatever.
You're responsible. You're looking the people in the eye on a regular basis. Lesser so in the larger cities, which is why I think that larger cities will eventually evolve into sub-DAOs. But in the smaller cities, this is going to be true right off the bat.
Yeah. I feel like NFT DAOs. I feel like I got a bad taste. I don't know. The
I think NFT
business.
DAOs. I feel like NFT DAOs would have been like they have a very cool capability. I still believe in them in a certain
Yeah.
way, that they
Yeah.
have a very cool capability
Uh-huh.
for cult formation. If you think about cults, have you seen the Netflix documentary, The Wild Wild West?
No. No,
So it's a
I need to check
documentary
it out.
about
So that sounds like.
it's a documentary about a cult leader who started a cult compound in Oregon somewhere,
Okay.
right? And he had followers coming
Oh,
from.
wait a second. I did. Is it Osho?
Yes, yes,
Or
yes.
it's like a religious cult that he did up there, and
I,
yes,
I,
I
I don't
did
think,
see
yeah,
that.
yeah. So it's like he had followers from everywhere across the world, and all of them were coming to this one physical location and like living his way of life. And wherever they were living in different parts of the world, they were still living his way of life. And all of this was not based on them understanding what he said or what his thoughts were or reading his work. It was mostly just the charisma of the man,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Jonestown is also pretty much that, right? It's the charisma of the man. So it's if the NFT cults are really powerful if the charisma of the story exists. So Milady's, like, despite all that goes on with them and everything that the curse and everything that happens to them, the community is so strong because of the fact that there is an inherent shared charisma that
Yeah.
the Miladies have. And it's just, it's a joke that they all share, and the joke gets funnier every time price goes up.
Yeah, I love the Melodies because it's a place where people can go and you can be as crazy as you want, and the crazier you get, the more like rewarded you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a cult. It's fundamentally
Yeah.
a cult. It's
Yeah.
just a cult of of a new kind.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that. I guess we don't have like too many of those on Solana that I would say are cult like, but like D-Gods weren't that far off.
Mad Lads are pretty close,
Yeah, I guess so.
but they're quite a benevolent cult, to be honest. They don't have the edge to them. Like Miladies have an edge,
Yeah,
which
Melodies, yeah.
is very clear that they have it. I don't know. Maybe something will come up.
Yeah.
I feel like NFTs
So,
will come back sometime this year. We're
oh
very
yeah.
close to them coming back. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we kind of saw, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, we saw, Mad Lads went crazy and a bunch of other ones started to go up. So I think we're kind of seeing the signs of that. And I mean, do you ever see there being an NFT that gets so cultish that they actually launch a coin on your platform and get a space together and just build it out? Or would that not be the
I don't know.
point?
I definitely see the value in. I definitely see the value in having like the New Yorker as an NFT, not the New
Yeah.
Yorker, but like the prototype of a New Yorker is an NFT series of a bunch of New Yorkers, the like that kind of thing, which is just fun to have, I guess. But I don't know what the additional delta it creates for the community in terms of the token and like the additional sort of value it creates for them in their everyday operations. So,
Yeah.
but it could just be a fun to have thing that they spin up and they do on their own, which is completely fine. But like, I think NFTs are very well suited for cloud communities. They're not very well suited for land communities. Land communities have a very strong, like, again, network of proximity, which does not need secondary characteristics, secondary assets for affiliation. Like
Yeah.
NFT is a secondary asset that you own for the purpose of affiliation, right? So I don't think land communities need that because their primary asset of affiliation is so strong, which is the geography that they share, that they do not need another thing to sort of tie them together.
That makes sense.
But I don't know. Anything can happen. I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. Cool. All right. So what else? What else do we need to know? I feel like you have this like, this is like way more in depth than I thought it was gonna be, and it sounds awesome.
Oh, at any point, if I bored you, I'm very sorry. I
No,
I
no,
nerd
not
out
at
on
all.
this shit a lot.
No, I could too. I could go on forever without this.
I mean, nothing much, man. We're getting ready to launch the app.
Uh-huh.
We're lining up city creators every week now. More and more people are coming in. I'm particularly excited about sort of cities that are launching outside the US.
Yeah, is it more outside of US now than US based, or
Right now, it's about 50-50.
is it okay?
Um, uh, it's so in the US, the interesting thing is that at least 70% of the cities that I've spoken to over the past 2 weeks have been relatively smaller sized,
Okay.
uh, which I'm very excited about. I think there's something very cool that can happen there. Uh, but yeah, if anyone is watching who's from Petersburg, Virginia, I would love to launch a token for your city. Petersburg, Virginia, I remember I went there in 2020, 2021. They had
Mm-hmm.
just gone back. The city had just declared bankruptcy about a year back, and
Mm-hmm.
it was in really bad shape. And I think it's a very small city. It's about a population of like 3,500 or something like that. And I think the city token can really help that city. Uh, so if anyone wants to launch Petersburg, Virginia, I'm happy to help. But yeah, I think all of our focus right now is on figuring out how we can best help the city DAOs and how we can improve the product itself. Uh, I'm also sort of just generally excited for there is a particular field now which has started to emerge over the past 3 or 4 years, uh, called urban tech. Someone I saw like a big like article about it. I can share it later. But effectively talking about how different parts of your daily life can be enhanced using just tech in general. So there was a proposal at some point to create a green resilience wall around downtown Manhattan, which would a just become like a public park and whatever, but also make it more resilient against flooding and stuff like that. There was some proposals around making sort of just manufacturing houses on an assembly chain, and Jupe is doing that actually. Jupe, which is a startup based out of San Francisco. They're doing sort of accessory dwelling units that are prefab. Stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that has become very cool now. We're starting to innovate more and more in the world of bits, in the
Yeah.
world of atoms, which is very cool. And all of those directly tie into sort of the city token being able to coordinate with them and work with those sort of innovations effectively. I want to see something like that happen. So yeah.
Yeah, me too. Like with the drop, like with the better technology that we have, right? You could probably prefab out houses way quicker, way better, way cheaper, more resilient over time. And as those costs all they go down more, you know, not only can people live wherever they want, the price of housing goes down, you can build these type of communities more that are closer. So I like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of a lot of things like that excite me. I also think that like there will be like smaller innovation that will happen within cities, which will be very hyper specific to its own problems,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't know like what that looks like in San Francisco. I know that like uh, in certain parts of Philly, it'll be around like package drop protection and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Packages get stolen a lot in Philly, so stuff like that, and I love to see stuff like that happen through the city token DAO.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you give any examples of what they've used any of the tokens for so far, or are there any good examples?
I don't think we're there yet. Like it's
Not
we
there. Okay.
launched. It's been 3 weeks since we launched,
Oh, has it
so
been only 3 weeks? Oh,
yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we're not quite there yet. But I think what I was pleasantly surprised by was that we held a meetup in San Francisco
Hmm.
for the San Francisco token community. A bunch of people showed up. Someone from the city showed up. They were very
Really?
receptive. They listened to what we had to say. Some of it they thought was crazy. Some of it they were happy to hear, and they gave very good feedback. And I'm very sort of I'd love to sort of continue working with them if they're interested. But it's just nice to know that they're taking this seriously and they're not thinking of crypto uh, as a scam anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I can't think of another city that gets bashed more, especially on Twitter. Everybody hates California. Everybody hates San
Yeah.
Francisco. It's a dying city. According to everybody. Um, but so I mean, it's kind of like under the microscope right now with all of that. But I mean, there are going to be solutions that come out of it, right? So there's going to be, people are looking for ways to actually better it, right? Like you said, most of the people that are in a lot of the administration and the bureaucracy, that they're good people trying to do good things and they just can't, right? So whatever can enable them, whatever can get them through, whatever can better connect the people that can do something with all the people that are living in the community is a great idea, right?
Yeah, and also ultimately, I don't think this is also like, if the city DAO chooses to sort of take a completely individual track of its own and focus on one specific problem within the city, and they want to sort of take that up and just run with it, that is an option as well. Like they're free to do that, and that's completely like it's your community's decision ultimately. So if you are, for example, in a city like San Francisco and you want to just exclusively use the city DAO to deal with the homelessness problem, you're free to do that. That's something that you should like probably pursue if it's that important to you and your community.
Yeah,
it's still a big win if you achieve it, because that's one thing off the plate.
Yeah, well, and that could be something that like gets the momentum going, right? Maybe they tackle one thing, and then that is what leads to the next thing, and what leads to the next thing, right? So that could even be a good start, right?
Yep.
Oh, that sounds good. So 3 weeks in, I feel like crypto time is extremely fast. So like, where do you see everything going in like the near future here? Like 6 months, 1 year? Like what are some of the goals? What are some of the things that you're looking forward to?
6 months, we want to have at least 50 city DAOs active.
50.
And active and operating effectively. And by operating, I mean doing actual stuff. By the end of the year, like so exactly year to date from now, we want to have at least 50% of those DAOs have become land communities, right? Come to a point where they're physical in nature and they have a presence, whether that's through a space or whatever. I don't like putting like number-based metrics on these kinds of things, because the market is not something that we control. It's ultimately like somewhere else. In 5 years, so I'll tell you what. This is the North Star metric here. When I lived in Philly, Philly launched the sugar tax, the soda tax actually. So the plan was that soda is going to be more expensive in Philly than the rest of the world, and we'll use the extra tax that you pay to fund public infrastructure like libraries, parks, etc., etc. At the same time, Kevin Iwaki had used quadratic funding to build a new library in Boulder, Colorado. And I was really excited about it. I talked about it to a bunch of people, talked about it to people from the city, and I was thrown out of the room. But the goal is to flip the sugar tax. Because if Philly has a city token, then you can use that city token to build all of these libraries and all of these public parks and whatever it wants to do. And instead of having to rely on this ridiculous idea that soda needs to be more expensive in Philly.
That is a ridiculous idea when you look at it like that. Yeah, no, that's a cool goal. That's a great goal. I'm excited to see where this goes. So if any of the listeners want to check it out, you guys do have an app coming soon, and is that going to be kind of like the primary interface that they'd be using?
Yeah, the app will be the primary interface now.
Yeah. Okay.
We will still have like a web interface just for the DAOs to sort of self-manage and do a bunch of stuff. Twitter's the best place. It's x.com/maps.fun. Just spell that out. Maps.fun. And just feel free to DM me. I respond very quickly. And if you want to launch a city, just DM me on Twitter and I'll make it happen.
Awesome. Oh, that sounds good. Well, I really appreciate you coming on here. Is there anything else that the listeners need to know? I feel like this is like a pretty like radical concept on the surface, but it's actually like has good history. I think that it's like got like great intentions. It seems like a fantastic project. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. Thanks for the time. Thanks for everyone who's listening. Check out Maps.Fun. If you want, again, I'll repeat it again and again. If there is a city token that is launching in your city, get involved, help them out, make your own city better. And if you want to launch a city token, reach out. That's all.
Sounds good. If they look on the app, will they know if there is a city token being launched in their city already?
Yes, they'll
Yeah,
be able to.
yeah, okay. And would they be able to connect to people if they saw that, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Oh, that's awesome. Sounds good. Well, I'm excited. Thanks again for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do. I mean, I'd love to have you back on in 6 months or a year and talk about where you guys are and see where you've gone. But this is awesome. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man. It's great talking to you.
Yeah, it's great talking to you as well. Let's talk soon.
Bye.
All right, thank you guys so much for tuning in to Solana Weekly. Once again, this is Thomas Bahamas, and I have one final ask for you guys. If you could, please subscribe on whatever player you're listening to. You could leave a review. That would be amazing. If you want to shill me your bags, work for them. But yeah, really appreciate it. And as always, this is not financial advice, but I want you guys to accelerate, move forward, and let's get this bag. I'll catch you guys next week.